trenches. Let's make a righteous ruckus.
Hey, welcome to another episode, or to this episode of the Righteous Ruckus podcast. If this is your first time listening, then just welcome to this episode. If you're a habitual listener or a continuing listener or viewer, then welcome to another episode. And I want to kind of follow up on last episode, which I was discussing about basically, a certain level of fasting, but just trying to focus on God and focus on His holiness and not so much on the noise of the world that can kind of creep in. It can creep in slowly before it's almost like a little bit like quicksand, I guess, or something like that, where you're sinking and you don't even realize it. We used to call it, in back when I was in the refinery days, they call it deviation of, what did they call that? They called it something. Anyway, basically, a deviation of normalcy or whatever. And basically it's trying to see things with fresh eyes. Like you can walk around your house all day and think that the house looks clean. And then you have somebody else come in and you say, hey, I want you to tell me the dirty places in my house I need to clean up. And they'll come in and they'll be like, well, there. But because you have just been accustomed. You've been accustomed to that. And what happens when you spend so much time in the muck and the mire of the world, then you kind of it gets caked to you. And you don't realize how dirty you are. For instance, my daughters, whenever they're playing, they can go play outside all day long, get in the dirt and the grass and get all sweaty and nasty and their feet, the bottom of their feet are just almost black from all the dirt and goop that they've been getting into. And you'll see it, on their face. They look like they've been working in a coal mine all day because they've been playing around. And if you were to say, would you like to take a shower or not take a shower? They'd be like, no, I don't need to take a shower. Right? They don't realize how clean how dirty they are and that they need to be cleaned up. And we can get the same way, and really kind of doing that somewhat of a fasting exercise that I was telling you, to just kind of retract a little bit from the world and isolate away from the social media and the news. I think I called it a news fast. We'll call it that, where basically you just you step back, not step completely out of the world, but withdraw to a certain extent to where you're just going to hit the high points. Now, this kind of reminds me of, so we all remember when 2020 came around and the COVID nonsense, right? And the hysteria. We don't want to withdraw to a level of, here's an example. So a coworker at the time, he's sort of a boss, over me. I worked with him, not necessarily directly over me, but I worked with him. And he was telling me, this was like 3 months into, I'm talking about the serious lockdowns where all the stores they were saying, you're going to have masks and 6 foot distance, all the nonsense, the complete nonsense that they were pushing. And, they're showing videos. Remember on the news what the whole thing was? Stay home and isolate yourselves. Don't go out. Stay home and turn on the TV and watch the news. And when you did that, they had a rolling death count, the death toll on the side of that they had boxed out on the TV, where the actual shows were just a small square, and they had headlines and death counts and everything. It was just complete. It was an intimidation tactic like I've never seen done before in my lifetime. And anyway, all that was going on in the middle of all that. And this guy tells me, or tells a group of us, he says, everybody's been on pins and needles for several weeks now, and several months actually. It was just months into it. And he said, I went to the grocery store, and he said, and this little old lady, right? This little old lady, in her late 80s probably, and she's walking along, and she's like, "Where's all the food at? Where does everything go? Where did it all go?" And he said he told her, he's like, "Well, this COVID thing, and she didn't have no mask on or nothing, which, on personally, I'm like, who cares?" And hindsight, that was the right move. But anyway, he said she's like, "Where's everything at? Where did it all go?" And he's like, "Well, this COVID stuff and the virus and everything and the lockdowns, it kind of got everybody's haywire right now." And she's like, "Do what?" And he's like, all the virus thing and all. She goes, "What virus? What are you talking about?" Whether she was just, delirious or, has some sort of degenerative disease, who knows? Or if she's just blissfully oblivious to what was going on in the world. You know what I mean? That I'm not saying to be that level of withdrawn from the world where you have zero idea. Now, if that's what it takes to eliminate your temptations or to shine light on the temptations, and that's what that fasting will do, that news fast, when you do that sort of thing and you take note in a conscious mental note of where am I being drawn to, that'll let you know that those are, pressure points that can be used for temptation. And anyway, so you don't want to be completely oblivious unless you absolutely need to. If you need to, by all means do it. So I just want to let you know, though, that this is a week since I did this news fast, and it was news, social media. I didn't listen to anything on the radio. I didn't listen to any. I've got some news podcasts that I listen to. That's current event stuff. I avoided those. Now, even though I did try to avoid those, there were still things that filtered through from time to time and place to place. And I actually, even to hear, it was a Wednesday night sermon done at church that was only available at on Facebook. I wanted to listen to that, so what I kind of did is put the blinders on, right? And I get on Facebook, and down at the bottom, there's all the notifications that are piling up, and I'm clicking up there on the search bar. I'm only going to my church's page and clicking on the sermon that I want. It's like I've got to keep the blinders on so that I'm not drawn to see what everybody else is saying. It's amazing when you withdraw from that and fast from that, how the temptations become ever more evident, right? Ever more evident. And so it's so easy to get drawn into just the noise of the world. And what I wanted to tell you is the benefits that I've noticed, because I'm not doing this. I'm not being braggadocious or patting myself on the back or anything. I just want to, this is to encourage you to, if you say, "Hey, boy, Riley got some benefit out of that, maybe I should give it a shot." Yeah, give it a shot. One of the biggest things was that the temptations to sin, the volume. Okay, have you ever been driving around through a neighborhood to a place you're not familiar with, and you're looking for the address, and you turn the volume down so that you can see better? Yeah, you know the irony of that, right? But you turn the volume down to turn down the noise so that your brain can focus on what you're looking for. That's basically what I notice, is that the temptation, the noise level of different sin temptations was turned way down, and in many cases basically eliminated, right? The sin temptations were eliminated. Whether it be, go down the list of sins, right? The temptations were, the volume was turned down on those. And another thing was, man, I had been feeling, part of the reason why I did this is I had been feeling like that the volume had been turned way up on everything, from political things to social things to just the economy, just the things of the world. The world is in such a frenzy and a tizzy and just in such a mess right now. It's just like this churning cauldron of goo that just is, if you get too close of it, it's going to splatter on you, like some bacon grease. You're going to get burned a little bit, and it's drawing you in there. And I just felt like it's time to just turn it, just back away. Just back away, turn the heat off, let it all cool down. Personally, anyway. And I'm really glad I did. I feel refreshed. I feel closer to God, which is always a good thing. Granted, you can't necessarily go fully off feelings, but it's, if you are walking around and you're going, man, I just don't feel like I'm as close to God as I have been. Well, God is not moved. God is not moved. You have moved. Right? So I know that I had been drifting away somewhat into the world, and I needed to get back to the foundation, right? Back to the foundation. And also, I want to thank, I should have done it on the outset, but another thing, man, by only checking emails and, only checking just things that pertain to godly things, with regards, my job too. My job it's not like there's ungodly things going on there or anything, but my day job, and then checking on things for like the podcast and those sort of things. And I got to tell you, I was blessed to have another donation by Mr. Anonymous has donated again. And I haven't plugged, honestly, it surprised me because I haven't plugged that on this podcast in a very long time. And it's quite honestly is one of the most humbling things I can think of is for somebody to give some of their hard-earned money to a cause like this podcast that they feel worthy of. And so if you feel led to, that's cool. I don't want it to be any sort of financial burden or anything at all. But you can go to givesendtogo.com/support Righteous Ruckus, and you'll see the campaign on there, and you'll see the anonymous donation that was recently given. And there's been several of those since I started the whole donation campaign. They just go to help keep this podcast going in the least little bit. And it's to think that somebody, I guess for lack of a better term, sacrificed their hard-earned money to help donate to this podcast is one of the most humbling things I can imagine. And, I can only think about how appreciative the Father must be whenever we donate to like the church and those sorts of causes. It's, missionary causes, which I don't know if this isn't a mission. This is just a podcast, right? This is a supplement. I wanted you to realize that too, that this is a supplement to your local church. You need to find, if you do not have a good local church and you are listening to this podcast as your primary source, or even podcasts in general as your primary source of teaching from the scripture, then you need to find a good local Bible-believing church that is very solid, that you agree with. And it's getting harder and harder to find. And honestly, it's getting harder and harder to find. Some good, balance of expository preaching with some current events addressed as well. There's a lot of churches that are purely expository. They just go verse by verse. They know in January 1, they know what they're going to be preaching at, December 31st. They know everything. They have the whole plan laid out for the whole year. There's a lot of things happen in a year where you need to break from that and address things that are applying to people's lives. Now, I don't think this podcast is purely topical. This is a topical podcast, which means that we generally pick a topic and like this fasting, this news fasting, this social media fasting, and then we'll talk about where a couple places in the Bible that address this and how it applies to our lives. And if that's all you're getting is topical preaching, it's probably not the best. I mean, it's better than nothing. But so to get a good mix of topical and expository is I think a healthy thing to do. So I'd encourage you to seek out some good expository preaching as well as some good topical preaching. So speaking of that, let's look at Romans 12. Remember, we're talking about this kind of social media fast, news fast, that sort of thing. Let's look for here. This is at Romans 12, verses 1 and 2. The title here is Living Sacrifices to God. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable to God, which is your reasonable service. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. And that's one of the things that I've greatly noticed in this week-long news and social media fast is that the first couple days you have the muscle memory almost of trying to get onto the news, get onto the social media, the places that will feed you stuff from the world. You have that temptation there and that draw and that, like I said, muscle memory. And I've done this before, and I noticed this is one of the great things that I noticed is because I've done this before, I knew what to expect going into it. So this time it wasn't near as tempting. It wasn't near as difficult, if you will. It wasn't near the draw that it has been before. Before it was like the whole week was I'm accidentally, in air quotes, accidentally clicking on Facebook or Reddit or other social media stuff or news websites. I'm accidentally doing that because you're just used to doing that. It's a habit. And this time it wasn't near as hard to break because I have done it before and I knew what to expect. So I know that next time that I do this, it will be even easier to break. And it will be last time it was more of a breaking the bonds of all that stuff. Whereas this time I had the great anticipation of knowing the end result from last time and kind of continuing it this time to where I knew what helped ease into the fast and cutting those ties with the social media and the news was the knowledge of the benefits that I was going to get as far as my relationship with God, my focus on godly things, my focus on heavenly things, and the diminishing of worldly things. It really, 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 really helped to know that and have that experience in my back pocket. And that's why I want to share that with you so that you can be inspired whenever you go to try this, that you will know, hey, this is what I got to look forward to, because just like Riley mentioned, that I can look forward to this. Another thing I want to talk to you, this is right after Jesus. This is in Matthew 6, verses 16 through 18. And this is right after he gives the exemplary prayer. And he says this is talking about fasting to be seen only by God. This starts in Matthew 6, verse 16. Moreover, when you fast, do not be like hypocrites with a sad countenance, for they disfigure their faces that they may appear to men to be fasting. Assuredly, I say to you, they have their reward. But you, when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face, so that you do not appear to men to be fasting, but to your Father who is in the secret place, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you openly. So that's encouraging you. When you're the temptation could be there for you to be braggadocious about your fasting, right? The temptation could be there to walk around and somebody say, "Oh, did you hear about XYZ?" And you say, "No, I'm trying to be holy. I'm doing a media and news and social media fast right now." There's no need to announce that. If I've had that happen throughout the week a couple times, man, what did you hear about that? I'm like, no, I didn't hear it. Tell me about it. Right? I mean, I'm not actively consuming it, but I'm building a relationship by having a discussion with somebody about something going on in current events. And it's something I didn't know. It actually helps you be a better listener because you don't know what's going on. So you're like, oh no, tell me about that. I'm genuinely interested. And also, I've been to nobody besides my wife that I've encountered throughout the week would be like, man, Riley must be fasting from something, because he looks like he's fasting from something and he acts like he's fasting from something. That's one thing that discourages you to do. And so the fasting is between you and your Heavenly Father. The fasting is not between you and Riley. The fasting is not between you and your boss. The fasting is not between you and the people at your Sunday school group or your church or anybody or your parents or anybody that knows you or your kids. That's not the fast. The fasting is you actively trying to be more Christ-like. It's a sanctification process. It's a fine-tuning, if you will, the sanctification process. Whenever you're going, okay, I'm trying to become more Christ-like. That's my goal. And so I feel myself slipping, further into the world, and so I need to cleanse myself. I've got to take a bath right quick. You don't take a bath 20. You don't live in the shower, right? You don't live in the bathtub continually scrubbing, but you have a certain time that you do that. And that's what why I notice I said when about 3 or 4 times at the beginning of that, because I used to think that fasting, before I ever started it, whether it be food fasting, whether it be this sort of fasting, whether it be whatever kind of fasting you may come up with, fasting is just giving up something to become closer to God. It's not necessarily food. It's not necessarily news. It could be any number of things you can fast from. And notice, I used to be of the persuasion that it was, just an old school thing, or these days it was a Catholic thing for Lent or whatever. But it says, this is the words of Jesus, words of God. It says, moreover, when you fast. The expectation is to fast. Now, the expectation is not to look sad when you fast. The expectation is not to make it completely obvious when you fast. If you've got somebody that if you're struggling in your fast, it's a good idea to bring somebody in to let them know that you're fasting. I told you before, sometimes when I've done food fasting, which I need to do more of that. But I've confided in my wife or my brother and been like, hey, I'm fasting today. And just telling somebody has been enough to make me go, okay, I'm doing it. It's helping me to be accountable. And I think that's good to do, to have somebody, if you're struggling with something like this, to be like, I let my wife know, hey, I'm going to be taking a news fast and a social media fast. I mentioned it throughout the week to my brother too, and his response was, man, yeah, that's a good idea. I probably need to do that too. And I think we could all benefit from it. And that's what I want to encourage you today, is just kind of talk about some of the benefits, because a lot of times you'll hear, this is how I fasted, or this is what I did. And that's really all you hear. And I wanted to kind of give you the flip side and tell you that the benefits are great. The benefits are great. I've been able to, my Bible reading is not interrupted by thoughts of current events, right? Now, I still am knowledgeable of high-level current events, but I'm not knowledgeable of every little thing that happened all over the world, today you can be completely consumed with news. So I was able to avoid that. And I'm also going to be cognizant as I re-engage with the news and re-engage with social media, in part to be able to edit and distribute this podcast. I'll be cognizant of and mindful of the effects that it's having on me from day to day. And that's really what I want you, that's the goal of this thing, is to be mindful of the effect the world is having on our lives, especially on our Christian walk. And that's what I want to leave you with, is that we want to have, tomorrow I should be closer to God, or the closest to God that I've ever been. And the day after that, I should be the closest to God that I've ever been. And the day after that, I should be the closest to God that I've ever been. That is the goal. And I want you to strive for that. I want you to strive for that with me, because I want that to be my goal. And I look forward to that. And anyways, I hope this has been an encouragement to you and a blessing to you. So have a blessed day.